The fact that the Jomon pottery culture made pottery is pretty much the only thing that we know about them. That's why they're named in that fashion. Jomon pottery is a kind of earthenware pottery that's particular to Japan, and was created during the Jomon period, which began 16,000 years ago and ended around the year 300 BCE. If translated into English, Jomon means rope patterned, which is a fair description of the patterns you'll find on the clay artifacts these ancient people created. The earliest Jomon pottery vessels aren't just the oldest pottery vessels in Japan, they're among the oldest in the entire world. Aside from the rope patterns in the clay, genuine Jomon pottery vessels can be identified by their short stature and rounded bottoms. Based on their design, historians think it's likely that the vessels were used to boil food over a fire. As the centuries passed, the style of the pottery evolved significantly. By the Middle Jomon period, positively flamboyant pieces were being created by people who, supposedly, were still little more than hunter-gatherers. Translating ancient languages is hard work, but that hard work can be made easier by the discovery of bilingual records and artifacts that help us to bridge the gap between one language and another. The Rosetta Stone is probably the world's most famous example of this, but the Pygri gold tablets are also very important. Found in the ancient port of Pygri in southern Italy in 1964, the tablets are inscribed in both ancient Etruscan and Phoenician, and were written and bound together more than 2,500 years ago. The content of the documents isn't especially significant, consisting of little more than a dedication to the Phoenician goddess Ishtar by little-known King Thefari Velianus, but as a historical record, they represent the oldest known source of pre-Roman writing in Italy. The fact that a Phoenician translation was included has helped researchers to decode a little more of the Etruscan written language, which still isn't fully understood or translated today. It's believed that it was commonplace in the ancient world for wealthy people to write works of religious devotion on sheets of gold as a way of showing that they prized their faith over their wealth. Our next fantastic artifact is a gold brooch prayer talisman that was found in Manningford, England in February 2022, and experts there think it was lost long ago, thousands of miles from where it was made. The talisman bears inscriptions written in both Latin and Hebrew, and is consistent with a style that was popular between the 12th and 14th centuries. The two inscriptions make up two distinct parts of a Christian devotional prayer. Why two languages were used for the same prayer isn't known. You'll probably be familiar with the prayer because it's still used today. It says, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Amen." A further four initials are added at the end of the prayer, A, G, L, and A, which stands for the Hebrew phrase, Atha Gebir Lilam Adonai, which means, "Thou forever art mighty, Lord." This was a magical phrase used in the Middle Ages to guard against illnesses and evil spirits. How the piece came to be in England will probably forever remain unknown, but it's likely to end up on display at the Salisbury and South Wiltshire Museum. During the 6th, 7th, and 8th centuries, the height of fashion for women in Scandinavia was to wear a disc-on-bow brooch. These beautiful pieces of jewelry were intricately gilded and showcased hand-picked red garnet gemstones from far-flung places like India and Sri Lanka. We know that the brooches were exclusively worn by women because they've only ever been found in women's graves. There might have been more to wearing these accessories than simply wanting to look good, though. There are signs that some of them were worn continuously for more than a century, suggesting that they were passed down through the generations from one woman to the next. Some experts have hypothesized that the complex patterns and images etched into the brooches might even contain coded information about the family history of the brooch's owner. Some of the disc-on-bow brooches even contain depictions of women wearing disc-on-bow brooches, almost like a jewelry-based version of the film Inception. If there is information encoded within the artifacts, historians have not yet been able to crack the code. Still, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. In August 2020, archaeologists and scientists in the United Kingdom re-examined a Viking helmet that was discovered back in the 1950s. To their enormous surprise, they discovered that it's likely to be the oldest ever to be found in the country. The helmet was discovered in Yarm, Stockton-on-Tees, more than 60 years ago. It was already considered to be important because it's one of only 2 almost complete Viking helmets ever found anywhere in the world, but tests have confirmed that it was made in the 10th century rather than the 11th. The experts also now think that the helmet is of Anglo-Scandinavian design, rather than being purely Scandinavian, so it was likely made by a Viking who was already settled and living in Britain. It seemed to have been buried deliberately, so it might have been left behind by an owner who intended to return for it eventually but never did. This act of burial in waterlogged conditions is what protected and preserved the helmet for so many years, insulating it against the worst effects of corrosion. It's now on display to the public at Preston Park Museum. Fort Rock Cave is at the center of Fort Rock State Park in Oregon, USA. From an archaeological point of view, it's an enormously significant site, but very few things have come out of Fort Rock Cave that are as important as the Fort Rock sandals. These are the oldest surviving shoes in the world, made from sagebrush bark, something like 10,500 years ago. Dozens of the sandals were found beneath a layer of volcanic ash inside the cave by the American field archaeologist Luther Cressman in 1938. The intricacy of the design of the sandals is surprising, given how primitive we imagine the people of 10,000 years ago to be. They're twined, with pairs of fibers twisted around warps, and have a flat, close-twined sole. The design is finished with a tie rope attached to the edge of the sole that would wrap around the ankle and fasten to the opposite edge, thus keeping the sandal secure. It's not exactly high fashion, but it's practical. The Fort Rock sandals are now safe and secure inside the University of Oregon Museum of Natural and Cultural History. The name cyclone is a shortening of cylindroconical stone. It doesn't sound like the most exciting type of archaeological artifact based on its name, but cyclones are the oldest artifacts associated with the Aboriginal Australians. It's impossible to obtain accurate dates for stone artifacts through scientific testing, but the oldest example of a cyclone discovered within an archaeological context for which a date could be obtained is more than 20,000 years old. There's no reason to suppose this is the oldest example of a cyclone ever discovered, so others may be considerably older. Australian historians believe that the incisions made in the ends of the stones are a form of communication. If so, they're the oldest form of recorded communication in the world. Some of the more extravagantly marked cyclones are thought by some experts to be maps. Again, if they're maps, they're the oldest maps ever discovered. A far less exciting theory about the artifacts is that they're little more than pestles used in food production. But there would be no need to make such specific markings on a pestle. The communication theory is probably accurate, but we have no way of decoding the messages. The Warka vase, also known as the Uruk vase, is one of the greatest treasures thus far recovered from the site of the ancient city of Uruk in what's now Iraq. This slim, stylish carved alabaster vessel was found in the ruins of a temple complex dedicated to the Sumerian goddess Inanna. Experts have been able to confirm that the vase was created around 5,200 years ago, making it one of the oldest surviving narrative relief sculpture works in the world. Simple relief sculptures have been found that are older than this, but the narrative nature of the design is a huge step forward in both quality and complexity. The bottom register of the artifact is dedicated to life's naturalistic components, such as water, wheat, barley, date palm, and other plants. The next register is full of ewes and rams, with humans making their first appearance on the middle register. Flora and fauna on the Warka vase appear to be ranked in order of their perceived importance, with the goddess Inanna standing atop the front portion, surrounded by an elaborate shrine, where she accepts votive offerings from servants. The vase was looted from the National Museum of Iraq during the 2003 American-led invasion of the country, but was later returned during an amnesty on stolen art. Latin is an ancient language, but how far back in history does it go? Well, we know that it goes back at least 2,700 years thanks to the existence of the Duenos inscription, which is one of the earliest known Old Latin texts ever discovered. It's inscribed in an unlikely place, along the sides of a trio of small vases known as kernos. The vases and their puzzling inscription were found by the German archaeologist Heinrich Dressel in the valley of Coroneo close to Rome, Italy in 1880. Today, the kernos is held in the Staatliche Museum in Berlin, Germany. Although it's usually possible to translate Old Latin, translating the Duenos inscription has thus far proved to be impossible. It doesn't help much that it was written without any spaces to separate individual words, nor that some of the letters can't be distinguished nor deduced by context. More than 50 different translations have been proposed since the artifact was found, most of which differ radically from each other, and none of which have gained acceptance via consensus. Research is still ongoing, so maybe we'll decipher the message one day. We hope it's not a shopping list. Religious fervor can motivate people to go to enormous lengths in order to demonstrate their devotion. Religious belief has inspired some of the world's greatest works of art, and also started its biggest wars. This next discovery belongs firmly in the former camp. It's a tiny booklet depicting scenes from the biblical Passion, and it's hand-carved from ivory. The one-of-a-kind ivory booklet is currently in the hands of the Met Museum in New York, USA, where experts say it was probably carved very close to the beginning of the 14th century, but the painted aspects weren't added until 10 or perhaps even 20 years later. The reason for the delay between carving and painting is unknown. There's some evidence that wax has been applied to the pages in the distant past, this allowing prayers of intercession to be etched into the wax with a stylus. The full history of the artifact is unknown. It made its way to the museum from the private Jack and Belle Linsky collection in 1982. Before that, it belonged to a gentleman called Albert Freund in Vienna, Austria. But where it spent its time between the 14th century and the day it entered Albert's possession is something we'll probably never know. The Malia altar stone is a fascinating archaeological artifact for many reasons. It's the only known example of Cretan hieroglyphs being carved onto stone, for example. However, its true value lies in the fact that the symbols etched onto its surface are almost identical to the symbols carved on the legendary Phaistos disc. The artifact was found close to Malia in Crete by a farmer during the 1990s. It was probably created by the ancient Minoans, and is similar in design to the altar stones known to have been made by their civilization, but is the only one bearing hieroglyphic markings to have been discovered thus far. By cross-referencing the glyphs that appear here with those on the Phaistos disc, it's possible to interpret the text as, "If you care for force and quantity, correct your path to the goddess Mean." That's clearly an imperfect translation of the original text, but it gets us a step closer to working out what the Phaistos disc might have been made for, even if we understand almost nothing about the goddess Mean and what she stood for. While we're talking about the Minoans, let's take a moment to talk about their burial practices. Every ancient civilization in the world came up with its own unique burial style, but almost all of those burials involve a coffin or a sarcophagus. The Minoan version of the sarcophagus is known as a larnax, but a larnax is considerably smaller than what you'd expect a coffin to look like. That's because of what's inside it. When we tell you that the larnax is sometimes also referred to as an ash chest, that ought to give you a hint about what you can expect to find inside it. However, the people who were buried inside ash chests weren't always cremated. Sometimes the bodies were bent or folded repeatedly until they fit inside the box. The first known Larnaxes were created during the Minoan era of the Aegean civilization. Back then, they were made of ceramic materials and are likely to have been styled after the type of linen chests that were popular in Egypt. Later on, during the Hellenistic era, they were made of terracotta and painted like vases. In some cases, like the 2,400-year-old Larnax that was found in Vergina, Macedonia, Larnaxes were even made of gold. We're going to November 2020 for our next discovery, which happened at the site of an ancient necropolis in Autun, France. It's this beautiful Roman-era diatretic glass vase made from reticulated glass. The Romans were exceptionally gifted at making glass artifacts, with skills that were light years ahead of every other civilization of their era. When it was found, the vase was smashed into hundreds of pieces, but experts spent a full year putting the pieces back together and were delighted to find that they had the whole vase. The cemetery was in use between the 3rd and 5th centuries, and the vase was found at the feet of an unknown individual who probably died during the 4th century. Only 10 Roman reticulated glass artifacts have ever been found. Of those 10, this is the only one to turn up in France or Gaul as the Romans knew it. The quality of the restoration and repair work is so good that we can now read the vase's original inscription. It says Vivas Feliciter. It translates as live in happiness. If you thought the cliched motto live, laugh, love was a plague of the modern age, think again. While the 19th century residents of Edo were getting a detailed look at pregnancy, the 19th century residents of the United States of America were getting a rather less forensic view of womanhood thanks to the works of D.W. Kellogg. Somewhere close to the year 1833, Kellogg released a map called A Map of the Open Country of a Woman's Heart. A helpful subheading on the map's cover informs us that the purpose of the map is to exhibit the internal communications of the female heart, as well as the facilities available to all who travel through the heart and the dangers that the organ can pose to those travelers. Unsurprisingly, given the prevailing attitudes of the time, Kellogg's work depicts women as being selfish, superficial, overly sentimental, and driven by vanity. Love is placed at the center of the female heart, with qualities like patience, common sense, and prudence positioned some distance away at the bottom of the organ. At the bottom of the map's cover, it's claimed that the map was drawn by a lady, but historians have proven beyond all reasonable doubt that it's Kellogg's work. It's the very definition of a 19th century curiosity. We've already covered the idea that there have been some unusual burial traditions around the world over the years. Here's another oddity that you may have seen during funerals if you lived in the United Kingdom during the Victorian era of the 19th century. It's known as a lacrimatory bottle, or to give it its colloquial name, a tear catcher. Some myths and rumors say that similar devices were used by the ancients of Greece, Rome, and Italy. But Victorian Britain is the only place and time direct evidence of their use has been recorded. It was once believed that people collected their tears in these bottles during funerals, and when the tears had evaporated, the period of mourning could officially come to an end. Similar vessels have been collected from ancient tombs all over the world and have been mistaken for tear catchers, but they were more likely used to hold perfume. Some anecdotal evidence suggests that the practice may have extended to America, where the widows of Civil War casualties would use the tear catchers during the funerals of their husbands, but solid evidence of this is hard to come by. Next up, we have a kigango. What is a kigango, you might ask? Well, it's a wooden memorial statue of the kind carved by the Mijikenda people who live in the southeastern coast of Kenya. They don't look especially humanoid in shape, but they're supposed to be effigies of the human form. Nobody knows when the practice of erecting kigango effigies began, but in the old days, they were built to last. Once they were erected, they tended to be left there until they rotted away, a process that could take centuries. Each kigango was roughly life-sized and would be painted in colors that were relevant to the deceased. Andy Warhol was known to be a great admirer of Kigongo and kept several of them in his galleries. There are several more in the museums and art galleries of the United States of America, although public opinion is beginning to put pressure on the owners of those museums to return the artifacts to Kenya. In their native country, Kigongo effigies are associated with a secret society known as the Gohu, about which very little is known. Speaking of artifacts that are currently inside American museums, here's a bird-shaped brooch that's currently on display inside the Met Museum in New York. It's Frankish in origin and would have been used to hold clothing in place. The artifact comes from either the 6th or the 7th century. Back then, the clothing of the average Frankish woman usually comprised a tunic held in place by a belt, over the top of which a cloak or wrap would be worn pinned in place with a brooch like this one. Decorative brooches like this beautiful bird were once all the rage, but by the end of the 7th century, tastes had changed, and most women wore simple, large, disc-shaped brooches instead. The brooch in the Met is considered to be one of the best preserved and most accomplished examples of its kind, highlighting the skill and virtuosity of the Frankish metalworkers of the era. The brooch was gifted to the museum by J. Pierpont Morgan in 1917, but unfortunately, its history and provenance prior to that aren't known. Please excuse the pun, but we've now broached the topic of brooches. With that in mind, it would be rude to move on without talking about the Rogart brooch. This amazingly well-preserved brooch is thought to be Pictish in origin and was probably made during the 8th century. It might not have looked out of place on the clothing of a Frankish woman 200 years earlier, as its design includes glass bird head decorations. The Rogart brooch is so named because it was found in the village of Rogart, Scotland in 1868 during rock blasting ahead of the construction of the Sutherland Railway. It's made from a band of silver, decorated with interlaced patterns of gold, topped with a thick head. Several other brooches were discovered at the same time as the Rogart brooch, but the one that's now on display at the National Museum of Scotland is easily the most impressive in the collection. The fact that they were all discovered together suggests that they were buried deliberately. Historians aren't sure whether they were buried as votive offerings or whether the burial was merely the act of a woman trying to make sure that her jewelry collection didn't get stolen. The Adena pipe is so named because it was discovered in the Adena Mound of Ross County, Ohio, USA in 1901. In turn, the mound is named after the Adena people. Tubular pipes are common Adena discoveries because tobacco use was widespread among the people, but effigy pipes are far less common. It's this factor that makes the Adena pipe so interesting, and it also explains why it's been selected to be the state artifact of Ohio. Aside from being an interesting object, it's also provided archaeologists with plenty of information about Adena culture. The pipe is so detailed that it contains representations of hair, clothing, and ornamental accessories. Were it not for the existence of the pipe, these details of what the Adena people looked like wouldn't be known to modern archaeologists. Experts believe that it's around 2,300 years old. It was found in the grave of an adult male, and might even be a representation of what he looked like when he was alive. Archaeologists think it's possible that he was either a shaman or a medicine man. Large-scale construction projects have a habit of turning up forgotten treasures from the past when workers dig into ground that hasn't been disturbed in years. We saw that happen in January 2017, when workers building a new Crossrail station on Tottenham Court Road in London, England, made the strange discovery of a collection of thousands of pickle pots and jam jars dating back to the country's Victorian era. There are more than 13,000 pots and jars in the collection, all of which are more than 120 years old. The vessels are all stamped with the logo of a company called Cross and Blackwell, which once owned a factory on the site, but shut it down in 1921. The company is still trading today, so perhaps they should have been asked to come and clear up their mess. The whole collection was found stuffed into an enormous cistern, which once powered the steam engines that, in turn, powered the factory. Many of the pots are sealed and still contain their original contents, which include things like marmalade, jam, piccalilli, and mushroom ketchup. While the idea of mushroom ketchup might sound disgusting to most people today, it was popular in Victorian London. Next, we have the gripping tale of a 3,800-year-old cuneiform clay tablet discovered at the Bronze Age site of Tel Atçana in southern Turkey. This ancient artifact was found during restoration work following a devastating earthquake. The tablet is inscribed in Akkadian and serves as a contract for the acquisition of another city by the king of Al-Alaq, the largest city in the region during the Middle and Late Bronze Age. Al-Alaq was a hub of commerce and culture, strategically situated on trade routes connecting Anatolia, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. The city was abandoned in the 13th century BCE, leaving behind a mound of 22 hectares in area and about 30 feet high. The tablet was found when the team removed rubble from a collapsed wall and is considered an extremely unique example to understand the economic and political models of that period. This discovery raises several intriguing questions. What does this tablet reveal about the economic power and political reach of ancient Al-Alaq? How did the concept of city acquisition work in ancient times? And what were the legalities involved? Could there be more hidden treasures waiting to be discovered in the ruins of Tel Atçana? In the tranquil village of Amanbayev in Kyrgyzstan, a trio of brothers and their friend recently unearthed a medieval marvel, a saber sword that has been aptly named the Kyrgyzstan saber. This 12th century weapon, with its graceful curved blade, showcases the pinnacle of medieval craftsmanship. The saber measures about 36 inches in total length, with a blade stretching to approximately 30 inches. Alongside the saber, the excavation also revealed a smelting vessel, coins, and a dagger, painting a vivid picture of a once thriving workshop. The saber's design suggests Iranian origins, and its curvature is akin to the famed Shamshir sabers of the Indo-Iranian region. Although the saber is the star discovery, the coins are also prompting interest from archaeologists. One of them featured Arabic inscriptions on both sides, and is thought to have been minted within the Karakhanid state during the 11th century. For it to be in Kyrgyzstan suggests that the borders of these Arab states might have changed during that, or the following century, as these particular coins weren't previously thought to have been circulated or used as currency in Kyrgyzstan. In the 2,000-year-old House of the Amphitheater, also known as the Casa del Anfiteatro in Merida, Spain, archaeologists have unearthed the well-preserved remains of a massive public bath area. The house, built by the Romans in a colony they called Augusta Emerita, contained baths of an extraordinary size for a standard Roman house. These baths would have belonged to a private residence, or perhaps a set of private residences, but they would have been widely shared, hence they could still be labeled as public baths. It's even possible that the baths might have been a focal point of grand parties held by the property's owner. And by parties, we're sure you can all imagine what we actually mean. The bathing area featured individual bathing facilities in excellent condition, along with ample wall and floor decorations, including marble plaques, moldings, paintings, and various underground structures associated with the baths. The House of the Amphitheater is part of the Archaeological Ensemble of Merida, recognized as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1993. This discovery offers a fascinating glimpse into the luxurious lifestyle of the Roman elite in ancient Spain. Imagine the delight of opening a dusty cupboard and finding a 114-year-old card game completely by chance in Castle Donington, Leicestershire, England. That's precisely what happened when a Hanson Auctioneer's appraiser found a complete set of Panko or Votes for Women cards. a game designed to promote the suffragist cause. Named after Emmeline Pankhurst, a feminist icon and a leader of the UK's women's suffrage movement, the cards feature illustrations of women activists and their government and legal system opponents. Created by Punch political cartoonist Edward Tennyson Reed and published in 1909, the game was sold for 2 shillings. Its primary aim was to advocate for women's suffrage in middle-class domestic settings, where more militant approaches would have been frowned upon. The cards are in excellent condition and are considered quite rare, found in only a few libraries and institutions. This game not only served as a unique form of activism, but also provides a fascinating glimpse into the social and political climate of the early 20th century. Pankhurst's cause might not have been popular with the political leaders of the country at the time, but it was clearly popular with the people. In the tranquil waters of Leo Piccolo, a village just north of Venice, Italy, archaeologists from Ca' Foscari University discovered a precious agate gemstone engraved with an unknown mythological figure. This underwater find is particularly rare and suggests that the area was frequented by wealthy Romans, who likely treated it as a vacation resort. The gemstone was found alongside a structure with a brick base and oak walls, submerged 11 feet below the water surface. Initially thought to be used for oyster conservation and farming, this structure was later identified as a holding tank for oysters before consumption. The site also revealed fragments of valuable frescoes and black and white mosaics, which led to the interpretation that it could have been a prestigious villa. This discovery not only adds to the rich tapestry of Roman history in the area, but also provides valuable markers for studying sea level variations and local subsidence. The gemstone and the surrounding artifacts offer a fascinating glimpse into the luxurious lifestyle and advanced engineering capabilities of ancient Romans. As for the identity of the figure on the gemstone, experts are working on it. Step into the Valley of the Temples, an archaeological wonder in Agrigento, Sicily, where recent excavations have unearthed a fascinating collection of votive offering figurines. This ancient city, founded around 582 to 580 BCE by Greek colonists, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and boasts some of the finest edifices of ancient Greek civilization, including the Temple of Concordia and the Temple of Juno. The discovery of over 60 figurines, along with protomes, female busts, oil lamps, small vases, and bronze fragments, was made in a housing complex north of the Temple of Juno. These artifacts were found above the destruction layers of the house, suggesting they were deposited after the city was sacked by the Carthaginians in 406 BCE. That means that they could be votive offerings, although it's also possible that they were left as a tribute to the people who perished in the sacking. This find not only enriches our understanding of the religious and cultural practices of ancient Agrigentum, but also provides insights into the dynamics of the city's destruction. It's a vivid reminder of how, even in times of chaos and upheaval, the human spirit finds ways to express devotion and hope. Just 4 weeks into the excavation of Mile Castle 46 on Hadrian's Wall in Northumberland, England, archaeologists have stumbled upon a fascinating relic, a small equal-arm steel-yard beam from an ancient Roman scale. Now, for a bit of context. Mile castles were little forts constructed every Roman mile along defensive frontier walls. There were once 80 of them dotting Hadrian's Wall, with Mile Castle 46 situated just north of the Magna Fort. The discovery of this steel-yard beam is particularly intriguing. Measuring about 9 inches, this copper alloy beam had a decorative central fulcrum hole for a suspension chain. One end of the beam showcased a triple bevel design and a delicate suspension hole where a weighing pan would have been hung. The other end? That was for hanging small weights. This steelyard was likely used by a skilled Roman tax official or merchant to weigh precious items passing through the Mile Castle. Given its location at a junction of 3 major Roman roads, Milecastle 46 was perfectly positioned for tax and control. Imagine the bustling activity of ancient traders, the clinking of Roman coins, and the weight of history that this steelyard has witnessed. We're about to delve into the eerie life of Vlad the Impaler, the infamous 15th century voivode of Wallachia and inspiration for Bram Stoker's Dracula. A recent study has added another layer of mystique to this already enigmatic figure. A chemical analysis of 3 letters penned by Vlad revealed that he likely suffered from a rare condition known as hemolacria, which causes one to cry tears of blood. Researchers used mass spectrometry to examine the letters, picking up 500 peptides, 100 of which were of human origin and presumably from Vlad himself. These peptides were tied to ciliopathies, genetic disorders affecting cellular cilia, and suggested he may have had a respiratory tract infection. Most intriguingly, peptides found in a letter from 1475 were linked to proteins of the retina and tears, leading to the conclusion that Vlad may have suffered from hemolacria. While the exact cause remains unknown, it could be related to an eye injury or bacterial conjunctivitis. This groundbreaking research not only sheds light on Vlad's health, but also adds a new dimension to our understanding of this historical figure, who was responsible for the demise of more than 80,000 people through impalement. Picture this. Students at the University of Marburg in Germany are excavating the site of a church when they stumble upon a pocket-sized marvel, a medieval sundial dating from the 16th century. This sundial, crafted from bronze and wood, is about the size of a matchbook and could easily fit in the palm of your hand. Dr. Felix Teichner, who led the excavation, lauded the find as a sensational glimpse into the intersection of astronomy, mathematics, and craftsmanship during the transition from the Middle Ages to modern times. The sundial likely belonged to a member of the Brethren of the Common Life, a religious community that resided in a monastery on the church grounds starting in 1527. Sundials have been around since at least 1500 BCE, first developed in China, Babylon, and Egypt. By the 17th century, pocket sundials had become quite common in Europe. This particular sundial was found in what was likely the monastery's rubbish dump, alongside other intriguing artifacts that are yet to be examined. It serves as a fascinating reminder of how people in bygone eras kept track of time, much like we do today with our wristwatches and smartphones. Archaeologists have made a phenomenal discovery in northwestern China, unearthing an elaborate leather horse saddle that may be the oldest of its kind ever found. The saddle was found in the tomb of a woman in Yanghai, located in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Dating back approximately 2,700 years, the saddle is believed to have been made between 724 and 396 BCE using 2 cowhide cushions filled with a mixture of straw, deer, and camel hair. This finding suggests that the history of saddle making may have started earlier than previously thought. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is its potential predating of saddles known from the Scythians, who were nomadic horse riders from the western and central Eurasian steppe. While the earliest known Scythian saddles are believed to date from the 5th to 3rd centuries BCE, this newly found saddle may have been crafted even earlier. The Yanghai tombs, where the saddle was discovered, are associated with the Shubeishi culture that occupied the Turpan Basin region around 3,000 years ago. The saddle's positioning in the tomb, with the woman seemingly seated on it, suggests that she was a rider. This finding challenges traditional narratives that associate horse riding with elite male warriors, offering evidence of women's participation in the day-to-day activities of mounted pastoralists. Our ancient ancestors loved to drink wine just as much as many of us still do today. But the vessels that they drank their wine from are very different from the wine glasses that you might have in your home. As an example, here's a ritual wine vessel that's currently in the collection of the Met Museum in New York, USA. It's about 3,100 years old, made of bronze, and should technically be known as a ju. For an artifact of such age, it's in remarkably good condition. The ju comes from China and gives a sense of the splendor of the wine ceremonies and rituals that happened in China during the Shang and Shao eras. The vessel we see in these pictures is actually one of 11 that the museum owns, most of which come from a tomb that was opened in 1901 in Dujitai Baoji in China's Shanxi province. It's been speculated that the mysterious inscriptions etched into the sides of the vessels are an illustration of how they're supposed to be arranged on a dinner table. But the symbols are so hard to decipher that this has to be treated as speculation. Since we've delved into the Met Museum, we should also take a look at the Chasse of Champagnon. This is a reliquary made somewhere around the year 1150, in which the face of Christ appears just beneath the roof plaque. The decorated box is rich with religious iconography, including the Greek letters Alpha and Omega, to represent the eternity of God and the presence of Mary Magdalene holding an unguent jar and a palm frond. Elsewhere, St. Peter can be seen holding the keys to the gates of heaven, and the four evangelists can be found in the upper and lower corners holding their gospel texts. The chasse originally comes from the Church of Saint Martial in Champignon, France, where the saint was thought by some to have been the 13th apostle of Christ. The precious one-of-a-kind artifact was gifted to the museum by J. Pierpont Morgan in 1917. Prior to that, it belonged to an Edouard Laforge of Lyon, who sold it to Morgan in 1868. But where it spent the 700 years prior to that is unknown. Despite that, there's no doubt that the artifact is genuine. Everyone watching this video will have heard of Tutankhamun, the Egyptian boy pharaoh. Most of you will know that his tomb was discovered by Howard Carter in 1922. However, some of the things found inside the tomb are more famous than others. We all know about the mummy of the pharaoh himself, for example, and his golden death mask is considered iconic. But far fewer people are likely to be aware of Tutankhamun's golden throne, even though it's every bit as impressive an object as his death mask. While the chair is generally referred to as golden, it's actually made of wood with gold leafing and coated with glass and gemstones. The legs of the throne are designed to represent the claws of a lion. Even the armrests have symbolic meaning, as they represent the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt through metaphors like cobras and double crowns. The wooden footstool that accompanies the throne features depictions of the enemies of Egypt, so the pharaoh can literally trample them with his feet when he sits on the throne. The throne was likely made specifically for Tutankhamun, hence being buried with him when he died. There are quite a few objects and artifacts that are claimed by their proponents to feature the oldest known writing on Earth, but the Dispilio tablet might be the definitive article. This object disproves the idea that the ancient Sumerians came up with the concept of writing 6,000 years ago, but not all archaeologists are comfortable with the idea of shaking up the timeline of writing with such a bold statement. That's why the tablet has been attracting controversy ever since it was discovered in a lake close to Kastoria in northern Greece in 1993. As it's made of wood, the tablet can be dated, and it's been shown to be over 7,250 years old. Unfortunately, as we have nothing to compare it to, translating the text has not been possible. It might contain a deep philosophical statement about the nature of life, or it could be someone's shopping list. Unless we're able to recover more examples of the same writing, we may never know for sure. That means that we'll never know who created it either. We might be able to take credit for the invention of writing away from the Sumerians, but we don't know who to award it to instead. A civilization is nothing without a code of laws for its members to abide by. No matter where you live in the world, it's likely that your local code of laws is at least partially derived from the Code of Hammurabi. These early laws were carved into a stone monument and named after King Hammurabi of Babylon. That helps us to date the artifact because Hammurabi ruled about 3,800 years ago. Now known as the Louvre Stele, the artifact lays down more than a few ground rules and legal requirements. In fact, there are 282 of them in total. These rules deal with both civil and business matters, for example, fines for uncivil behavior and harsher punishments for dishonest business conduct. The principles of the text, which is written in Akkadian, are surprisingly forward-thinking for something so old. The first states that laws should exist to protect the weak from oppression by the rich and powerful. The second says that everyone is entitled to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. You can't even guarantee that basic freedom in some parts of the world today. We're diving back into the collection of the Met Museum now to check out its beautiful Lotiform chalice, which is a stunning piece of ancient Egyptian art. It's proven to be difficult for scientists and historians to obtain an accurate age for the chalice, but we can say with certainty that it was made between 2,600 and 3,000 years ago. The blossom pattern of the blue lotus decorations on the chalice is a common motif across almost all forms of ancient Egyptian art. The Egyptians saw lotuses as symbols of creation because they opened their petals to the sun every morning. On the side of the chalice, we see a man carrying either a calf or a cow over his shoulders, accompanied by a large water bird and an unidentified horned animal, while on the upper band, there's a depiction of another man using his strength to separate a bull from another horned animal with nothing but his bare hands. The symbolic meaning of these images is unknown. Staff at the museum are reasonably sure that the chalice was made in Egypt's Tuna el-Gebel region, but its full history is unknown. There aren't many crowns in the world more famous than the Crown of England. We can think of one crown that's more famous, though, and that's the imperial crown of the Holy Roman Empire. In fact, we'd go so far as to say that this is the most famous crown in human history. This golden hoop crown, famous for its octagonal shape and its ostentatious jewels, was used as the coronation crown of the Holy Roman Empire from the end of the 10th century through to the formal dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire in 1806. It was also used in the coronation of the King of the Romans. These days, you'll find it in the collection of the imperial treasury of the Hofburg Palace in Vienna, Austria. The artifact is so old that we can't be sure when it was made, who for, or who by, but most historians believe it was used for the first time in the coronation of Otto I in the year 962. The crown was once adorned with a rare and valuable jewel, possibly a large white opal, known as the Orphan, but it was lost sometime after 1350. Copper, also known as Sheikh el-Beled, was a scribe in Egypt during the time of the 4th and 5th dynasties, some 4,500 years ago. He wouldn't be considered a particularly significant scribe were it not for the exceptionally lifelike statue of him, which is the best preserved ancient wooden statue in the world. We don't know much about Copper's life, other than that he was a lector priest and also an army scribe of the king. We don't even know what being an army scribe of the king actually entailed. Because of that, we'll never know what he did to deserve so fine a statue when every other man of his rank had to make do with a fairly basic tomb. The tomb of Copper was found in the necropolis of Saqqara by Auguste Mariette in the mid-19th century. The nickname Sheikh el-Beled, which means headman of the village, comes from the Egyptian diggers who worked for Mariette. They thought the statue was a dead ringer for the elder of the village they came from. The statue of Copper, which is made from sycamore wood and depicts the scribe walking with the aid of a staff, is now in the Cairo Egyptian Museum. Close to the village of Asuka in the Nara prefecture of Japan, you'll find the ancient Kitora tomb, a sacred space with a very strange set of decorations upon its ceiling. Every expert who studied it agrees that it's a map of the night sky, including 68 different constellations, some of which have stars picked out in gold leaf as to indicate that they're more important than the other stars around them. There are even side circles drawn around the map, appearing to indicate the movement of the sun and the moon. That would be an impressive achievement for any ancient astronomer. But the mystery doesn't stop there. It's generally thought that the Kitora tomb was created in either the 7th or 8th century. Why, then, does the map on the ceiling show the position of the stars as they would have appeared around 400 years earlier than that? Not only that, the stars are in the wrong place. This is how the night sky would have appeared from China, not Japan. It's both out of place and out of time, and we have no idea why. The ruins and relics of the ancient Mayan civilization can be found all over Guatemala if you know where to look. But there might be no better place to look than the archaeological site of Takalik Abaj. There, you'll find a large stone slab known as Stela 87. The artifact is roughly 2,000 years old and might represent the very beginnings of Mayan writing. The slab, which features the oldest known usage of Mayan hieroglyphic script, is inside a building that archaeologists somewhat fancifully describe as a laboratory of ancient writing. They believe that the Olmec, predecessors of the Mayans, began experimenting with writing here 3,500 years ago. Deciphering the content of the Mayan script is difficult because the symbols used differ so significantly from the form that the Mayans would use centuries later. But it's thought that it's a record of a king's name, along with all of his various royal titles. Through studying the other symbols and carvings at the site, it's possible to trace the evolution of written communication from dots and dashes to complex hieroglyphs and expressive phrases. On balance, maybe that description of it as a laboratory of writing isn't so fanciful after all. In 2019, an old brooch was found in a truckload of soil in Great Dunham, England, by an amateur metal detectorist. The soil had just been poured onto a recently landscaped field. The detectorist brought it to a professional archaeologist, but the expert couldn't identify where the brooch came from. 3 years have passed since then, and we're still none the wiser. The brooch, which takes the form of a silver disc, has been dated to the late 9th century. It's similar in style to items from the Pentney hoard, which was discovered not far from Great Dunham in Norfolk. The problem with trying to identify where the brooch came from is that it's impossible to trace the truckload of soil. We know that the artifact wasn't in the field before the soil was dropped off because the metal detectorist found a 19th century plow underneath it. But companies that transport soil don't tend to keep detailed logs of where their soil comes from or when they picked it up. The brooch features a cross with concave arms crossed over a saltire, with depictions of animals on the reverse. While it's possible that it was made by the same artist who created the items in the Pentney hoard, it will likely never be possible to know for certain. For many years, archaeologists and historians have been trying to solve the mystery of the giant green rock cube that stands at the center of Hattusa in Turkey. This was once the capital of the feared and mighty Hittite Empire, and it's thought that the cube has been standing there since their time. Over the centuries, it's come to be known as the Wish Stone, and is periodically visited by people who lay their hands on it and make a wish in the hope that it will be granted. That's unlikely to be its original purpose, though, and what particularly interests archaeologists is the fact that the stone is made of a material that isn't native to the area. It's either nephrite or serpentine, and might have been brought here as a peace offering by the ancient Egyptians to mark the signing of the Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty that was agreed in the year 1259 BCE. The ancient city of Hattusa was the first major archaeological excavation site in Turkey, and for all the wonderful things that have been found there since, none have matched the wishing stone for mystery. Archaeologists tend to suggest that almost anything they don't understand is either a calendar or a grave marker, and so we present our next discovery with caution. But there's a very real chance that this tiny carved pebble is the oldest lunar calendar in the world. The stone, which was discovered in the mountains close to Rome in Italy in 2007, is approximately 10,000 years old. That means our Stone Age ancestors made the markings on it. and scientists believe that the lines notched onto its side at regular intervals were intended to help the pebble's owner keep track of the lunar cycle. The positioning of the notches is deliberate. Scientific analysis has shown that they were cut and recut numerous times over many years, presumably because the original marks faded over time. As there are 28 markings, and the lunar calendar lasts between 27 and 29 days, the theory that this is a calendar stone appears to be backed up by evidence. An item like this might have been used to plan festivals or events, or simply used to track the passage of time. Our next puzzling find is such a riddle that it challenges the narrative of established history on a global level. It's a gigantic ancient stone head that was discovered in the jungles of Guatemala during the 1950s, but seemed to be impossibly out of place. That's because the features on the face of the sculpture are unmistakably Caucasian. Yet there's no way that the pre-Hispanic people who lived in Guatemala could have seen a Caucasian face before if the history we're taught in schools is correct. It's likely that the Olmec people created the head, as they created several similarly sized heads in the area 3,000 years ago, all of which are positioned so the face looks toward the sky, just like this one does. But none of the others have Caucasian features. This one is unique. Frustratingly, the statue was severely damaged during armed conflicts within the country around a decade after this now infamous photo was taken, making further study impossible. The picture has been confirmed as being authentic, though, and the mystery of how it could have been created remains unsolved. Strong religious beliefs have inspired human beings to create many incredible works of art, but perhaps nothing so intricate and beautiful as the Ratnagiri temple complex in Odisha, India. This collection of ancient stupas, shrines, and monasteries, all of which are devoted to the Buddhist faith, was created over a period of 1,000 years, with the oldest of the temples appearing in the 6th century, and the most recent being built at some point during the 16th. Today, the majority of the buildings are ruined, but they're stunning ruins to look at. The site, also known as the Hill of Jewels, was the location of Pushpagiri University during the 12th century, a Buddhist education facility so significant it was recorded in the records of Chinese traveler Huan Sang. Despite the vast size of Ratnagiri, it remained undiscovered until 1905 and wasn't fully excavated until 1961. Even now, some people believe there are further hidden layers and undiscovered buildings hidden away there. The thought of people taking on a construction project of this size 1,000 years ago is mind-boggling. Considering that Homo sapiens are the species we belong to, our knowledge of the history of the species isn't as strong as you might expect it to be. For many years, scientists have believed that Homo sapiens evolved from a multitude of different hominid species. In October 2013, a discovery was made that implies that all of the early Homo species, including Homo rudolfensis, Homo habilis, and all the rest, were all part of one species. The relatively new theory is based on an analysis of a 1.8 million year old skull that was found at Dmanisi in Georgia. Known only as Skull 5, it's the oldest totally preserved skull of a hominid from the Earth's early Pleistocene era, and was found alongside a set of stone tools and animal fossils. In the past, scientists have theorized that the differences between early hominid remains meant that they belonged to different branches of the evolutionary tree. But through examining the complete skull, it might be more likely that the Homo erectus species covers all of the hominids, and the shape and features of their skulls simply evolved over time. In a way, this would be good news. It would mean that human evolution isn't as complicated as we thought it was. It will take quite a leap of faith to accept that our next artifact is what it appears to be. But even if it isn't, experts are having a hard time explaining what it is and where it came from. It's a silver coin marked with the World War II era symbols of the Nazi Party, and yet the date stamped on it reads 2039. To those who like to indulge in conspiracy theories, It's come from an alternative timeline where Germany won the war, and we all live in a Nazi future. Construction worker Diego Aviles found the coin during a renovation project in Mexico. Diego insists that he hasn't tampered with it, and he's as puzzled by it as everybody else. Experts have also examined the coin and concluded that it hadn't been tampered with, but thus far have struggled to date the coin accurately. If it was minted in the recent past, we would be able to safely conclude that this is a hoax. Without that tiny piece of information, though, we suppose all things are possible. Archaeologists are generally confident that they know what they're going to find when they start digging up old Stone Age settlements. Usually, their eventual haul will include stone tools, butchered animal bones, and human remains. The strange object that turned up close to Stavanger Airport in Norway in 2015 is far more difficult to explain. Inside an oval-shaped bed of rocks, carefully covered with flat stones, this wooden object survived the past 6,000 years. The archaeologists who found it think that it might be a tool, but that's little more than an educated guess. Nothing like it has ever been found before, but that's not especially surprising, as wooden artifacts tend to rot away long before they reach the grand old age of 6,000. The style of carving applied to the object is ornate, and it's to be assumed that the gap in the center had a purpose. When looking at it, some people find it reminds them of a chair leg. Others see it as a rolling pin. And perhaps they're right. This might have been an essential kitchen implement for Stone Age bakers, if such a thing existed. Just as mysterious and confusing as the Stone Age wooden object in Norway is this strange gold mount, which turned up in Norfolk, England in 2016. The best guess of the historians and archaeologists who've looked at it is that it comes from a sword grip, and probably belonged to a 6th century Anglo-Saxon warrior. But elements of the design are inconsistent with other sword grips that have been recovered from the same era. Perhaps more significantly, no evidence of an old Anglo-Saxon settlement has ever been found in Fakenham, the town in which the object was discovered. To make matters worse, a sword grip should have small perforations for attaching the sword's blade. This artifact has none. That might mean that it was discarded because it wasn't fit for purpose, or it might mean that we're not looking at a sword grip at all. A brooch and a belt mount have also been found in the area in recent years, but with no signs of any settlement, it's a mystery what these Anglo-Saxon visitors were doing here. When you find something old and unusual and are unsure what it is, a museum is an excellent place to head for advice. The experts there should be able to help you to shed some light on the matter. When the museum isn't sure what it's dealing with, there's a problem. That's the status of this bizarre object that was found in a storage area of the Beach Finds Museum in Castricum in the Netherlands in 2018. The museum's staff believe the object was part of a collection donated to the museum several years ago, but it wasn't cataloged correctly, and now they have no idea what it might be. Its presence in that particular museum suggests that it was found washed up on a beach, and its design has hydrodynamic properties, suggesting it was built for use in the water. But other than the fact that it's made from aluminum and has a winged design, the Dutch experts have no more idea what it is than we do. They've even contacted the Dutch Navy and the Royal Netherlands Institute for Sea Research, and neither of those bodies could come up with an answer either. Do you recognize it? If so, please let us know in the comments. When you find a 2,000-year-old pottery artifact, you expect it to have been broken into tiny pieces and badly damaged, even if it can be reassembled. That isn't the case with the Portland vase, which is one of the most stunningly beautiful decorative ancient Roman artifacts that survived to the modern age. It's as mysterious as it is beautiful, though. Hundreds of experts have studied it, and most of them have wildly different opinions about what the figures on the cameo glass represent. Clearly, there's an attempt to tell a story, but nobody can get a consensus on what the story is. To compound the confusion, the cameo glass disc at the bottom of the vase, with its representation of Priam, has been added at a later date. Some scholars believe that the vase tells the mythical story of sea gods Peleus and Thetis meeting and getting married. But just as many scholars feel that it's the historical tale of Cleopatra seducing Mark Antony. There's even a suggestion that the etchings represent the scene immediately after Julius Caesar was murdered. Way back in 1928, the royal cemetery of the town of Ur in Iraq was excavated, and in the process, an incredible work of art was found. This is the statue that's gone on to be known as the Ram in the Thicket, and it's in such spectacular condition that you could easily believe that it's a recent replica of the original work. There's no deception though. This is the original, and it was made around 4,500 years ago. It has to go down as one of the finest artistic achievements of ancient Mesopotamia, but that doesn't answer the question of how it should be interpreted or what it might represent. As the statue was found inside a tomb that appeared to contain the remains of royal servants, it might be a testament to servitude, but that's only a guess. Even the name is potentially misleading. It comes from the biblical tale of Abraham sacrificing a ram that he found in a thicket, and was only applied to the piece after it was discovered. The real meaning behind the statue appears to have gone to the grave of whichever gifted ancient Mesopotamian created it. In December 2012, an amateur archaeologist made a remarkable discovery in the cold ground of Harby in Denmark. It might not look particularly beautiful, and it's little more than the size of a thumb, but it's the only known three-dimensional Viking-era depiction of a Valkyrie ever to be found. The tiny figurine is around 1,220 years old. Viking mythology depicts Valkyries as companions of Odin, who descend onto battlefields to determine which warriors would die and which would live. These days, they're most commonly associated with the musical piece Ride of the Valkyries from the operas of Wagner. The delicate little statue is made from gilded silver, with even smaller pieces of black and yellow inlay decoration. The Valkyrie's hair is tied in a long side ponytail, which forms a loop at the end, which has led some historians to theorize that this artifact might once have been worn as a pendant. She carries a Viking sword and shield at her side. Numerous two-dimensional representations of Valkyries have been found at Viking sites and etched into Viking artifacts, but nothing like this has been found before or since. Some historians wonder whether making a 3D representation of a Valkyrie might have been believed to bring bad luck, which is why this piece is so unique. The game of chess has roots in numerous older board games, most notably the Viking game Hnefatafl, so tracing it back to its precise point of origin is probably impossible. As far as we're aware, though, the oldest chess set in the world is currently in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, USA. It dates back to the 12th century, and although the pieces don't look exactly like the pieces you'd use to play the game today, they perform the same functions and serve the same roles. The king, for example, is represented as a throne. The queen is a smaller throne, and the bishops are replaced by elephants. The rooks are the most strikingly different pieces of all, taking the shape of wedged rectangles rather than their familiar castle forms. The chess set isn't quite complete, and the board upon which they were used is missing, but it was clearly once a beautiful ornamental set. It must surely have belonged to someone of great wealth, but we sadly have no idea who that person was. We suspect that they probably won a lot of games though, as most of the people of the time would never have come across a chessboard before. While we're examining the collection of the Met Museum, let's stay a moment longer and examine this arm reliquary, which is surely the most controversial artifact in the whole museum. We'll start with what we know. The reliquary was made during the 13th century, probably around the year 1230, and has survived the passing of time in pristine condition. The quality of the craftsmanship is outstanding, with stunning rock crystal and glass gem decorations adorning the silver base. The golden hand at the top of the arm is raised in the symbol of a religious blessing, which offers a clue about its alleged contents. That's where the controversy comes in. According to the inscription etched into the wrist of the piece, the arm of Saint Ficre is contained inside the object. That alone can't be proven, but even if it could, we don't know which Saint Ficre the inscription refers to. History has recorded 3 such saints, any of whom could be contenders. Perhaps the most likely candidate is the 7th century Irish hermit, who is said by the people of his time to be a powerful faith healer. If that's the case, we can't help but wonder where his arm was between the 7th century and the 13th, when this elaborate container was created. The Novalara stele was made in Italy around 2,600 years ago, and if you can translate the inscriptions on its surface, you'll have done a better job than any archaeologist, historian, or academic who's ever looked at it. The inscriptions are written in a language called North Pisene, which is itself a variant of ancient Etruscan. We've never been able to fully translate the ancient Etruscan language, hence the difficulty with understanding the meaning of the stele. Even the pictures on the reverse of the stele don't help. They appear to show a traditional hunting scene, but there's no way of knowing whether they're connected to the text on the other side. It's been more than 130 years since the Novalara stele was found, and it's as big a mystery today as it was to the people who found it. It would be a little bit embarrassing if, after all this time, we found the message was something akin to a diary entry saying, "I went hunting today and had a good time. Here are all the animals we caught." But at least we'd finally have a solution to the puzzle. There is no object as Australian as the boomerang. Boomerangs have become a symbol of the land down under and were being made and used by the original inhabitants of the land long before Europeans arrived there. The objects are best known for returning to their sender when they're thrown, but early boomerangs weren't always designed to do that. The 4 ancient boomerangs that were found in Kinipapa Creek in Inaminka, South Australia, are of the non-returning kind. The artifacts were discovered during 2 separate archaeological surveys in 2017 and 2018, but a full analysis of them wasn't completed until 2021. That analysis revealed that the boomerangs were carved during the 17th century and had uses other than hunting. They may still have been used as projectiles occasionally, but they also show signs of having been used in digging, fire management, and even as close-quarters combat weapons. Experts think that they were made by the native Yandruwanda people. The Yandruwanda culture was assimilated when Europeans colonized Australia, but their descendants still live in the area today and have taken possession of the boomerangs. Speaking of artifacts from the pre-European era of English-speaking countries, here's a 1,200-year-old canoe that was found in a lake in Wisconsin, USA in early November 2021. Water vessels like this are known as dugout canoes and are made from a single hollowed-out tree trunk. Archaeologists found it 30 feet beneath the surface of Lake Mendota. Based on its age, it's likely that the boat was made by the ancestors of the First Nations Ho-Chunk people. Archaeologists think that dugout canoes were the first types of watercraft ever developed by our ancient ancestors. This particular example is the oldest fully intact canoe of its kind ever found in Wisconsin. Taking it out of the water was a risk because of the threat of instant deterioration, but the vessel has now been coated with protective chemicals and will be coated with further chemicals for the next 3 years to stabilize it before it can be placed on public display. The Wisconsin Historical Society hopes to open a new museum in the area in 2026, and this canoe would make the perfect exhibit. Could you cure or prevent a hangover after drinking alcohol by wearing a ring? The suggestion sounds ridiculous, but the ancient occupants of Israel believed so. This stunning amethyst ring was found close to a Byzantine-era winery in October 2021, and archaeologists believed that it belonged to a wealthy individual who loved wine, but didn't enjoy the headaches that came the morning after drinking it. The artifact was found in Yavna near Tel Aviv and is at least 1,300 years old. It might even be as old as 1,700 years. Many near-supernatural qualities were associated with amethysts back then. including the idea that they prevented hangovers. The origins of this strange belief aren't known. We do know that it existed as long ago as 320 BCE, because the Greek poet Asclepiades of Samos wrote about it in his work. This is far from the first golden amethyst ring to be found in the area, but it's rare to find one with a stone of such size. It's probably fair to assume that whoever owned it wanted to show off their wealth and status, and the large amethyst was a way of doing so. A crayon was found in an ancient lake near Scarborough, England in January 2018. You might be thinking, so what? But this isn't the kind of crayon that you'd give to your children to draw pictures with. This crayon is 10,000 years old, and archaeologists say it was used to decorate animal skins. The lake is now covered in peat, which makes it easier for archaeologists to explore it. A red ochre crayon was found further along what would once have been the lake's shore. Ochre is a pigment made of sand and clay, and ochre pebbles can be scraped to produce a red powder that can then be turned into crayons. 30 deer antler headdresses were later found at the same site, all of which appear to have been painted with either this crayon or a crayon like it. Red ochre was an enormously important color to Mesolithic-era people, who used it to color everything from the walls of their caves to the bones of their dead. What we don't understand is why they did that, or what the significance of the color was. Unfortunately, it's unlikely that we'll ever get to the bottom of that mystery. In February 2022, 4 Bronze Age Minoan ingots were found off the coast of Caesarea in Israel. According to the archaeologists who found them, the lead ingots are evidence of a previously unknown large-scale trading network that existed between Sardinia and Cyprus thousands of years ago. The ingots are made from lead that was mined in Sardinia approximately 3,200 years ago, but were discovered more than 1,550 miles away from those mines. The markings engraved into their surfaces have been identified as Cypro-Minoan in origin. Although this hypothesis is still considered controversial, many archaeologists have taken the existence of the ingots as a sign that the Cypriots imported lead from thousands of miles away. This goes hand in hand with the established fact that the Sardinians imported and used vast quantities of Cypriot copper. It seems that raw materials were regularly transported back and forth across the Mediterranean, and lead may even have been directly exchanged for copper. We've known for a while that the Minoans and the Phoenicians were advanced seafarers during this period of history, but now it seems that they may not have been the only ones. For many years, it's been thought that the oldest surviving newspaper in the world is the Leipziger Zeitung, which was printed in Germany in 1660. It seems that's no longer the case after a monk discovered an even older newspaper on the internet and ordered it to be delivered to Yonghwa Temple in Yeongchun, North Gyeongsang, South Korea. This as yet unnamed paper was printed on November 23, 1577. The monk, who lives at the temple, says he's always had an interest in ancient literature and bought a bundle of old books and newspapers on an internet auction website. It seems that the seller had no idea of the true value of the newspaper. It's a fascinating insight into the culture of South Korea at the time, and discusses concerns about the health of Queen In-seong after she failed to appear for an expected meeting with the heads of state on November 6th. Other stories of note include hundreds of cows dying of a mysterious infectious disease, along with weather reports and horoscopes. The newspaper's content is surprisingly similar to the content of the average newspaper of the 21st century. The artifact we're about to show you is thought by some to be the oldest solar device in the world. It's a solar igniter, also known as a yang sui. Objects like this were described in the writings of Confucius 2,600 years ago. He spoke of curved mirrors made of polished, shiny metal that could concentrate the rays of the sun and start fires. The name yang sui translates into English as burning mirror. Confucius said it was the duty of the eldest son of a family to wake up early and use a burning mirror to start the family's cooking fire for the day. This somewhat corroded device appears to be precisely what the great philosopher described. It was found in a 3,000-year-old tomb in China in 2014, still clasped in the skeletal hand of the tomb's occupant. Archaeologists thought it might be a tiny wok before they realized its true purpose. To confirm their theory, they had a mold made from the artifact and then cast a replica in bronze, and then polished it and used it to start a fire using sunlight. It worked perfectly and only took a few seconds to start the fire. All over the world, there are artifacts in museums that probably shouldn't be in those museums. One of them is the Doryphoros of Stabiae, which is inside the Museum of Minneapolis in the United States of America. The beautiful statue was stolen from Italy after illegal excavations during the 1970s and sold on the black market. The Italians have wanted their statue back for years, but in February 2022, the government finally issued a formal request to the US government in the hope it might get things moving. The statue is a Roman marble copy of an original Greek bronze sculpture created by Polykleitos and comes from the lesser-known third city to be buried alongside Pompeii and Herculaneum by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. When the Museum of Minneapolis first acquired the statue more than 30 years ago, they described it as a hot find. What they probably didn't know is that it was hot in the criminal sense of the word. Thus far, there hasn't been an official response to the request from the museum. But it's hard to see how they could justify hanging on to it now that the truth is known. We said right at the start of this video that some of the things we were going to highlight were discovered by amateurs, and this is a perfect example of what we meant. It's a collection of exceptional ancient Roman artifacts that were found by an amateur metal detectorist in Hertfordshire, England in April 2015. The finds have been precisely dated to the year 174, and the haul consists of a bronze dish and 3 ornate jugs. Professional archaeologists quickly turned up at the site after the discovery was reported and eventually found cremated bones and mosaic glass dishes. They've described it as a cosmopolitan Roman burial site. It was possible to obtain such an exact date for the artifacts because of the presence of a single bronze coin dated to the year 174. The mosaic glass dishes are the stars of the collection and are incredibly valuable despite the fact they were broken into hundreds of pieces when they were found. All the pieces are there, so it's possible that experts might eventually be able to put them back together. Rather than being local, the dishes were most likely made in Alexandria in the early 1st century. The glass dishes are masterpieces of Roman art, but our next finds are masterpieces of ancient Greek art. They're known as the Vaphio gold cups. There are only 2 of them, and they were both found inside the Vaphio Tholos tomb in Laconia, Greece, towards the end of the 19th century. The level of detail on the decorated cups is exceptional, as is their state of preservation. Looking at them, it's hard to believe that they were created by a Creto-Mycenaean craftsperson more than 3,400 years ago. The scenes on the cups are rather unusual. The first has a wraparound scene of a man tying a rope around the leg of a bull while it mates with a cow, which was presumably a peaceful way of capturing the animals. The second is a little less peaceful, showing an escaped bull attacking 2 hunters while a third runs away. It's been speculated that this might even be a representation of how the person in the tomb died, although that can't be proven. The identity of the person buried in the tomb couldn't be verified at the time, and will sadly never be verified now because the tomb has been almost totally destroyed by overzealous treasure hunters. The art of making toys for children is a very ancient one. Nobody truly knows just how ancient it is, but we know that there were people making toys at least 2,000 years ago, because some of them were found inside the tombs of children in the ancient Turkish city of Parian in September 2017. Parian was an important seaport during the Hellenistic period and stood in what's now the province of Çanakkale. Rather than being toys that the children played with while they were alive, it's likely that they were intended as gifts for the dead to be played with during the afterlife. The finds tell us a lot about the socio-cultural beliefs of this ancient society. For example, female figurines are found exclusively in the graves of girls, while male figurines are only found in the graves of boys. This is the ancient equivalent of boys playing with Action Man dolls while girls played with Barbies. It seems that while trends come and go and the sizes and shapes of toys change, the human mentality has always remained basically the same. We have the discovery of an exceptionally rare coin in Hungary at the end of February 2022. Coin discoveries are common, and not all of them are worth reporting on, but this one is. That's because of the identity of the person whose face is stamped into its surface. The face is that of Emperor Volusianus, who was co-ruler of the Roman Empire for just 2 years during the 3rd century before he was assassinated by his own soldiers at the age of just 22. The brevity of his reign means that very few coins bearing his likeness were ever minted, so they're hardly ever found. This particular coin is rare even by those standards, as it's of a denomination known as an aureus. No coin of this denomination bearing the face of Volusianus has ever been discovered before. It's also the only coin to come from this Hungarian site, so it's likely that it was lost by someone rather than deposited there deliberately. If that's the case, it would have been an expensive loss for whoever left it behind. The work of archaeologists at the site of Pompeii in Italy will likely continue beyond the lifetime of anybody watching this video. It's simply too large and too complicated a site for work there to be wrapped up at any point within the next century. It feels like there's a new discovery there every week, and the latest is the supply chest of an ancient stoneworker. The trunk was found inside the reception room of what's known as the House of the Library. It's large and wooden, and still contains several slabs of ancient yellow marble quarried in Numidia, along with green serpentine taken from the Peloponnese Peninsula in Greece. Very little of the chest has survived the passing of the centuries, but its contents are unharmed. It's thought that the property was already abandoned when the volcano struck in the year 79, as it had been extensively damaged by an earthquake 15 years earlier. This chest probably belonged to a worker who had been hired to repair the damage and make the home habitable again. Unfortunately for them and for the homeowner, they were doomed never to get the chance to finish their work. 18 years ago, the Met Museum in New York attempted to acquire a beautiful Renaissance-era roundel. They failed in that attempt, but finally succeeded by securing the piece in February 2022. And here it is. This parcel-gilt bronze roundel is considered to be among the most accomplished works of its kind. It's only 16.5 inches in diameter, but it's exquisitely detailed. It might be small, but it's still the largest known bronze roundel from this period in history. It took $27 million for the Met to finally get its hands on the piece, which depicts the goddess Venus seemingly flirting with her lover Mars while her husband works at the forge behind her. The Latin inscription beneath the scene reads, Cypria Mars et amor gaudentur Vulcan laburas. It's a literal description that translates into English as Venus, Mars, and Cupid enjoys themselves while Vulcan works. This was a popular scene and concept among the artists of northern Italy during the late 15th century. There's no doubt that this is the work of a master goldsmith, but sadly the name of that goldsmith has been lost to history. Being an archaeologist means that you'll sometimes find yourself waist-deep in someone's old toilet. It's not a glamorous job, but somebody's got to do it. This rather smelly discovery was made in the town of Berwick in northeastern England in February 2022, just 2 miles south of the country's border with Scotland, where the NHS Foundation Trust is spending £30 million to build a new hospital. Before the hospital is built, archaeologists have been allowed access to dig through the ground and see if there's anything worthwhile down there. It's a good job they got the call, because they found some of the town's old medieval fortifications and a large public toilet. The barrel-shaped latrine was made of planks of wood, bound together with hazel, and might once have been used for food storage before being repurposed as a toilet. Wooden structures wouldn't usually survive for this long in the ground, but a combination of the waterlogged soil and the somewhat ripe nature of the barrel's contents has preserved it for hundreds of years. The contents of the barrel will now be carefully examined in a lab to see what they can teach us about the medieval diets of people in this part of the world. We've looked at a coin already in this video. Our next discovery is also a coin, but you might not recognize it as such. We expect coins to be round, and even when they're not round, we expect them to have a flat hexagonal or perhaps pentagonal or octagonal shape. That wasn't always the case in the ancient world. Take these ancient Greek coins, for example. They're shaped like dolphins. The coins come from the former Greek city-state of Olbia and were minted around 2,500 years ago. We'll probably never know for sure why these ancient Greek people chose this unusual shape for their currency, but they may have been inspired by the large dolphin population that exists in this part of the Black Sea. The residents of Olbia would have seen dolphins every day, and even trained some of them as pets. The ancient Greeks also believed that dolphins were sacred fish, and referred to them as delphinos. Greek legends say that it was a dolphin that helped Poseidon to find Amphitrite, his mermaid wife. Making coins with dolphin shapes might have been an expression of local pride, although how highly valued they were beyond the borders of Olbia is open to question. The female figure was among the very first of the shapes carved from rock by our most ancient ancestors. Go back in time thousands of years, and you'll find far more statues and figurines of women than you will of men. Here's a 3,000-year-old example from Tayanat, Turkey, that was discovered in August 2017. Sadly, there's very little left of her other than her head, shoulders, and back, and the damage that the statue has sustained doesn't appear to be accidental. In fact, it seems that her facial features have deliberately been chiseled away. It must have been enormous when it was complete. This last remaining chunk of it is 3.5 feet long and 2 feet wide. Most archaeologists think that the full sculpture would have been 16 feet tall and would have stood at a gate outside Tayanat's ancient upper citadel. 3,000 years ago, Tayanat was called Kunulua and was the capital of the Neo-Hittite kingdom of Patina. The entire citadel was destroyed in the year 738 BCE by the Assyrians, which is probably when this statue was toppled and then defaced. Because of the lack of facial features, it's impossible to know whether she's a representation of Kubaba, the ancient Anatolian mother of the gods, or a real person, like the wife of King Suppiluliuma, or the mother of Taita. When you first see the 15 temples that make up the Masroor temple site in India's Jangal Masroor Joneel Reserve, it seems impossible to believe that they were all carved from the same single piece of sandstone. There's too much space between them, and no single piece of sandstone should be so large. Nevertheless, that's what happened here. It's been proven by repeated testing and examinations. What that testing can't tell us is who made the temples, when they did it, or why. There are almost no solid, verifiable facts available about this mysterious place at all. Evidence at the site suggests that there were once 19 temples here, but 4 have succumbed to either earthquakes or weathering. Even the 15 that are still standing would probably collapse if they weren't supported by scaffolding. The Hindu epic Mahabharata says that the temples were built by 5 brothers known as the Pandava, who were at war with their cousins. Why a family dispute would result in the creation of these temples is never made clear. A more likely explanation is that the construction work was funded by wealthy traders during the 9th century as a way of giving thanks to Rama, Siva, Sita, and Lakshmana for their success. History doesn't record this event though, so we'll never know for sure. 3,300 years ago, someone stumbled across a collection of prehistoric fossils in an Egyptian desert. Not understanding what the fossils were, they either assumed they were human remains or sacred objects, and so they wrapped them in linen and built them a tomb. They even left them ivory tools to help them in the afterlife. That tomb and the 2-million-year-old fossils inside it was eventually rediscovered by archaeologists in 1922. Confusingly, the tomb is one of the many tombs of Kwa el Kabir, where burial space was generally reserved for the rich and powerful of Egyptian society. Someone thought so much of these fossils that they buried them among their elite and carried them hundreds of miles to get there. Kwa el Kabir is dedicated to Set, the god of chaos, earning the fossils the nickname the Black Bones of Set. It wasn't until 2014 that X-ray scanning technology revealed the fossils to be those of various animals, including horses, buffaloes, crocodiles, boars, and wildebeests. But the largest bones belonged to enormous prehistoric hippopotamuses. It might have been this sight that terrified the ancient Egyptians into such an act of dedication. Hippos are associated with Set, so these frightened travelers might have believed they'd stumbled across the remains of a god. Hunting bison was a way of life in Alberta, Canada, 2,500 years ago. Having said that, a 2015 discovery by a team from the University of Lethbridge reveals that there might have been more to the act of hunting bison than simply killing and eating them. Sean Bubel and her students were excavating a bison hunt site in southern Alberta and had worked their way through the remains of no fewer than 68 bison when they came across something strange at the bottom of the pile. There, beneath the bone bed, were even more bison bones forced into the clay earth vertically. 8 such bone structures were found at the site, all of which dated to 2,500 years ago. Sean concluded that they were created at the same time the rest of the bison were butchered and consumed. It's not unheard of for ancient Native Americans to have used bones as anvils or as weights to hold down teepees, but there's no evidence of that happening with these bones. Instead, Sean thinks they might have been buried in this manner as part of a ritual celebrating the successful hunt, or as a way of giving thanks for the hunt. This behavior has never been recorded elsewhere. What doomed the ancient town of Atlit Yam and condemned it to collapse into the water off the coast of Haifa, Israel? Scientists have been able to tell us that the town has been beneath the waves for around 8,300 years, but they haven't yet been able to say how it got there. However, being underwater has helped to preserve the town and its structures. Because of that, marine archaeologists can still see Atlit Yam's water wells, individual houses, and burial grounds partitioned off from the rest of the town. That's a greater degree of town planning than we expect to find with people who lived 8,300 years ago. We generally think of them as little more than nomadic hunter-gatherers. Based on the evidence of Atlit Yam, we should reassess that perspective. In the middle of the town was a freshwater spring, which was surrounded by a stone circle. Examining the bones of the people in the graveyard has led to an even more surprising discovery. At least 2 of them died from tuberculosis. These are easily the oldest known cases of tuberculosis in the world, and might offer an alternative explanation as to why the town was abandoned to its fate. Every now and then, an unexplained body will turn up in a mine in Iran's Zanjan district. These aren't modern-day murder victims, though. They're ancient mummies, being returned to us one body at a time. They're almost always male, and generally in such an excellent state of preservation that their beards and long white hair are still present. Archaeologists refer to them as the Salt Men of Iran, because they have no other means to refer to them. We don't know what culture they belong to or what they were doing so deep inside this salt mine. The further into the mine archaeologists go, the more bodies they find. The most recent examples were discovered so far down that even their internal organs have survived the passing of the past 11,000 years, which is thought to be how long it's been since these burials began. The practice must have gone on for a very long time, because the most recent of the mummies found so far is a little under 2,000. Unusually, each of the men has a protruding jaw and a short nose. This may have been a genetic trait and might even have been the basis for creatures that the Greeks and Romans referred to as satyrs. Fossils are the petrified remains of things that lived millions of years ago. Scientists know a lot about fossils, and can usually at least differentiate between the fossils of animals and the fossils of plants. Not so with these mysterious fossils, which were discovered in China's Lantian Formation in 2011. The fossils are fan-shaped, no longer than 2 inches long each, and around 600 million years old. They were first thought to be seaweed fossils, but after further examination, they were found to belong to an unknown organism that doesn't contain the signatures of either animals or plants. Suggestions include the ideas that they might be very early polyps or sea anemones, but the bulbous structure at the end of their bodies is more like a holdfast, which seaweed uses as an anchor. To make things even weirder, the fossils were deposited in an oxygen-free environment, but organisms like these ought to have needed oxygen to survive. It's possible that they belong to an evolutionary chain that no longer has any living descendants. Over a decade after their discovery, the fossils remain unexplained. The process of mummification was most famously used by the Egyptians to preserve their dead. But the Egyptians weren't the first to mummify their dearly departed. One of the oldest and most challenging mummies in the world is the Tashbinath Black Mummy, which was found in Van Muhugiag, Libya in 1958. Tests indicate that the mummy is at least 5,400 years old, which makes it far older than the first mummy of the pharaohs. Great efforts were made to preserve this body, which is that of a 3-year-old child after it passed away. The surgical methods used in the mummification process include incisions of the chest and stomach, along with the removal of all internal organs. The cadaver was then filled with preservatives to hold off the decomposition process. After the process was complete, the body was wrapped in animal hides and then covered with plants and herbs. The evidence points to the existence of a culture in Libya that had detailed knowledge of mummification long before the Egyptians began to practice it. As for who this culture was and where they went, we have no idea. The House of Taga on the island of Tinian in the Northern Mariana Islands is notable because it isn't a house. Instead, it's a space where a house used to be. These enormous stones, some of which are standing but many of which have fallen down, are thought to have supported a gigantic house on stilts thousands of years ago, perhaps even in Neolithic times. Back when they were new and complete, the stones were 15 feet tall and topped with hemispherical stones that served as the main supports for a home mostly made from wood and straw. By building their home on stilts, the property's owner would have been safe from most of the threats posed by flooding and local wildlife. Local legends say that a giant called Taga picked up the stones by hand and put them here himself. But the legend might be based on the tale of an ancient chieftain called Taga, who built the house to impress a woman he'd fallen in love with on the nearby island of Rota. We have no way of knowing whether that's true, and we probably never will. It's thought that the house was destroyed by an earthquake centuries ago, leaving us only with the stones to remember it by. Speaking of islands full of ancient myths and legends, here's the sacred Japanese island of Yakushima. It's only 17 miles wide and almost entirely made from granite. Scientists think it was most likely created by an enormous volcanic eruption about 15 million years ago. However, some people believe that a few of the stranger stone formations on the island were built by hand. The most famous of them is at the peak of Miyanoru-dake, which is also home to a Shinto shrine. The arrangement of a smaller flat stone atop a larger one makes it look vaguely humanoid and has earned it the nickname the Guardian of Yakushima. Some people also claim to be able to see faces on the side of the 7,000-year-old Japanese cedar tree called Jomonsugi elsewhere on the island. Elsewhere, you'll find enormous, smooth, curved boulders that look like they've been carved into segments with laser precision and perfectly square rocks that might have been quarried thousands of years ago. It's difficult to separate myths from legends on this island, but it's fair to say that there's more to its history than scientists are currently able to explain. Travel to the village of Dolny Vestonice in Moravia, Czechia, and you'll find one of the most mysterious ancient graves in the world. The grave is that of 3 teenagers who were laid to rest about 25,000 years ago in a very specific, very strange arrangement. One of the 3 bodies is face down. Of the other 2, the one on the left has been arranged so his hand rests on the pelvic area of his neighbor, which was then covered in red ochre. Archaeologists know the site simply as the Triple Burial, and have been trying to explain its symbolism and significance ever since it was discovered in 1922. That's very nearly a century ago, and we still don't have any answers. The body in the center is female, and so the red ochre on her pelvic region might represent blood, but that's more of a guess than a theory. Red ochre was also applied to all 3 of their heads at the time of burial, with the male on the left also wearing a painted mask. Everything from human sacrifice to ritual suicide has been considered as an explanation for their deaths, but no burial like this has ever been found before or since, and with nothing to compare it to, it's impossible to be certain. To the native Central Australian people of the Arrernte groups, a Jurunga is a sacred object. They've been considered sacred objects for as long as the Arrernte have existed, but during that time, the definition of a Jurunga and what it's supposed to symbolize has been lost. Everyone agrees that the objects have religious origins, but that's the only thing they can agree on. We use the word objects because there's no longer any limitation on what a Jurunga might look like. They might be made of wood or stone. They're often oblong-shaped, but they aren't always. Some groups hold them to be so holy that even publishing a picture of them is considered sacrilege. Others have a more relaxed attitude and happily use them as bull roarers or to paint with. They've also been known to appear in ceremonial headdresses. Often, they're venerated objects held in special enclosures that only a handful of people are allowed access to most of the time. On the rare occasions they're on public display, they're celebrated with special ceremonies that involve ritual dancing and chanting. The word Ju means secret, and Runga means personal to me. Given that we no longer know how Jurungas came into being, perhaps this is a secret that was kept too well.